Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I am thrilled and excited to have a very special guest here with us today, Mary Jelkovsky. And Mary is the creator of Mary's Cup of Tea, which is an amazing online platform that empowers women to be more confident in their bodies and to really love themselves unconditionally. Now, after recovering from an eating disorder, Mary started an Instagram account at Mary's Cup of Tea to help women heal body image struggles and find self-love. And now Mary Jelkovsky is, doing so amazingly well. And Mary, I'm so proud of you because you are a published author. You're a TEDx speaker. You're a women's self-help retreat host. I know you've done a lot of awesome retreats and you've gotten tremendous feedback about them. And she has an awesome podcast. In fact, you're one of the people that inspired me to start mine. So thank you. And her podcast is called Mary's Cup of Tea Podcast. And it is an amazing top of the line self-love podcast. In fact, it's one of the highest ranking in the world. Mary is the author of The Gift of Self-Love, which is a workbook to help you build confidence, recognize your worth, and learn to finally love yourself. Of course, written like a letter to a close friend, this special book provides practical advice and exercises that will help you to finally love yourself. And her story is just incredible. It's been featured in Teen Vogue, TEDx, as I mentioned, Health Magazine, because unfortunately, a lot of women know what it's like to struggle with self-love and body image. And I imagine, Mary, that's true for many men as well. And Mary is absolutely committed to changing this trend by inspiring thousands and thousands of women through her book, through social media, podcast, online courses, and all the awesome things that she does. So Mary, it is just thrilling and exciting to have you here with us. And on a personal note, I met Mary a few years ago at Toastmasters, where we both, went every week to practice our public speaking skills. And so for any of you that have some public speaking, self-doubt or anything like that, it absolutely is possible. And you can do it just as we're doing it. So Mary, welcome.
Thank you, Barrett. You make me sound so good.
That's because you are. And I'm not just referring to all the many accomplishments. I'm referring to your soul, to the amazing things that you do because you deeply and authentically care. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today because I believe that, as we shared in the introduction, that many people, men and women, struggle with their mindset regarding their body and how they perceive their body. So I would love to maybe just learn a little bit more about you. You've mentioned this eating disorder. Would you be willing to share with us how you got into this world, how you got to caring about this area, this field?
Yeah. So I started, like many young girls, when I was in middle school. Barrett, you and I were talking about before this call how middle school is the worst, and it was for me. I really internalized like beauty standards and the pressures on girls and women. And something I've been thinking about a lot recently is like, I think before, girls and women for a few centuries now have been trained to believe that their sole worth is to be pretty or to be beautiful. But there's this extra layer now where we're feminist. So we also have to be like smart and intelligent and driven and like all the things. And so it's like, instead of like just dismantling this system and rebuilding it from scratch in a way that empowers everybody, we're just kind of piling on the pressures and expectations because now, we have the trap of productivity and of working hard and of making lots of monies and achieving so many things. And so I was very much like perfectionistic and driven. And I half-heartedly joke that I grew up believing that a perfect girl has to be three things: smart, pretty, and thin. And very quickly, thin became my number one priority. And in high school, I was also dancing a lot. I was doing ballet and just so many things added to that pressure. So I kind of developed an eating disorder very early on, although I did not know it. And it was only, and I say I didn't know it because it was so almost encouraged. I think diet culture encourages disordered eating, still does. And like, we think about people complimenting other people for losing weight, without even thinking about like why they lost weight. Like maybe they were really, really depressed and like forgot to eat for weeks, or maybe they have an autoimmune condition that also causes weight loss. But we always frame it as a very positive thing because apparently everybody's sole purpose in life has to be to diet and lose weight. And it's something we all just buy into. I think a lot of people, especially adults, I think we never like question that. Um, and we never ask ourselves, like, do I really need to be living my life like this? But, it wasn't until I started competing in fitness competitions because I thought if only I could have the perfect fit body. And at that point, it's like I'm really young. So it's the early 2000s, 2010s, where we've gone from like heroin chic to fitness and like fitness models. And those are the people that we see in the media. And so I started being that, and I started competing in bikini competitions and modeling and doing all these things. And a few years into that, my body just started fighting against me. Like I felt like I couldn't do it anymore. Everything was difficult. I was really struggling with my eating disorder, which I eventually had to be honest with myself and realize that I was struggling. And I just went on this healing journey. And at first it started as like, I'm just really tired and I just want to heal my body because I had so many hormone problems and kidney infections, and I was in the hospital so many times because like my stomach was all messed up, and which is very common for chronic dieters, right? Like IBS, and aside from mental health, there's a lot of physical consequences that come with restricting and yo-yoing and depriving yourself. So I went on this like healing journey, and first it started as like I just want to like make peace with myself thing, and then it turned into this big beautiful self-love journey, and I started sharing my story online, and so many people were like, yeah, I'm tired too and I want something different. And so that's when I started like working with women and writing more about just the whole process of recovering in a world that's telling you not to, and gaining weight in a world that's shaming you for that. And I just started sharing that more and more. And I guess a lot of people found solace in that. So.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing with us a little bit of where it all started, because it really is a big problem. And I think that's for young girls. I think it's for older girls and for men as well, to some degree. And I'm curious, in all this kind of journey that you've been on, this self-love, self-healing journey, what have you learned about yourself that has helped you to escape that old pattern?
That's such a good question. What have I learned about myself? I think the biggest thing is that my worth was never about my weight or my looks, or even later on and more recently, my work. Because I think what happened, which happens to so many people, is we replace the thing, but the theme is still there. So for me, I was also always chasing numbers, like a lower number on the scale, calories, counting the minutes ran on the treadmill. It was always about numbers. And so I started letting go of those numbers. But then a few years later, I replaced those numbers with like work related numbers, like, money that I'm making and downloads on my podcast and followers. And so that's what I'm recently trying to get rid of. But yeah, the biggest thing that I learned about myself is that my worth as a human is not in any number. Like it cannot be monetized. It cannot be capitalized. It doesn't fit into this box. Like I joke, I'm like, you're worthy because you're human. That's it. You win. Like just give yourself a pat on the back. And we don't have to do anything to prove that. And unfortunately, again, we've been taught. I mean, I saw this video, gosh, it was years ago, but it stuck with me. It's just on Facebook, and it was a viral video, and this toddler was throwing a tantrum, just like throwing a tantrum, screaming, yelling, pounding fists on the floor. And this dad was just sitting there, not doing anything about it. Like literally nothing. And the kid would like try to hit him and crawl on him and get his attention. And the dad just would like pat him on the back and just not even say or do anything at all. And this went on for like 10, 15 minutes, like just this whole video. And I just thought about how profound that was, because people in the comments are like, he needs to do something. And, you know, half the people in the comments are like, why is he just sitting there? And the other half of the people in the comments are like, that is such a validating experience for somebody to not run from your feelings, to just sit there with you and be in there with you as you're going through whatever you're going through, because we all have an inner toddler. And just know that you're still worthy of love and affection. Like he wasn't like yelling at the kid or rejecting him or anything. But again, it goes very counterintuitive to what we've been taught about so many things, including modern parenting, right? And discipline and achievements and those kinds of themes.
So I think that what you're sharing is a desire that many people want to have, which is getting to this place of truly connecting with their worth, not just at an intellectual level. Well, they can say, yeah, that makes sense. Yes, I feel worthy, but truly at a heart level, to truly, truly believe that in every cell in their body. And what would you say to a young boy, young girl, or maybe an older boy or girl, an adult who has never really felt that self-worth authentically, deeply? What can they do?
I think the answer lies in not really doing so much.
Mhm.
I don't think, and this is so hypocritical because my book is technically self-help, but we do think that a self-help book is going to make us feel better. And so many times it doesn't, right? It just adds another thing to do, to read. Um, and yeah, I think for somebody who I would challenge that, because I think we all have moments where we do feel worthy. And I think the way that manifests for a lot of people is that we don't even recognize it. And it could be like really small moments. Like, for me, it's very much related to nature, like when I'm out or on the ocean. And we have these moments where we just feel like more connected and like we're not going anywhere, but they've become rare and rare as we get so busy. And so I would challenge somebody to think about a time where they felt, instead of using the word worthy, because I think that it makes for a great theme and a great concept to discuss. But when it comes to like, when do you feel worthy? People are like, I'm not sure what that means. So the way I like to phrase that question is, when do you feel the most like yourself? And the answers that I get from my students are like, well, I feel the most like myself when I'm just hanging out with my boyfriend and we're laughing about the stupidest thing. And, other answers I'll get is like, I feel really myself when I'm doing my art, my craft, or dancing or singing or baking or whatever it may be. For me, I had like a particular experience, and it basically involved like friends and great music and being on a boat and just like living my life. And of course, these moments, like when I describe being on a boat, we're not living our lives on a boat, but the themes, the reason why I felt so like myself and it just felt so good, and ultimately I felt so worthy of that love, joy, and happiness, is because of those common themes of like connection, like whether it's to yourself, to other people, to the greater whole, humanity, nature, or just like freedom, right? When I feel like I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing and like on my terms, or just, I don't know, lightness. I don't know if that's a word, lightness, or like humor, like fun, like, those kinds of things. Like that's when we really feel worthy, because in that moment, we're not like, oh my God, I shouldn't be laughing right now because I'm a piece of shit and I hate myself. We're like, no, this is funny. I'm in the moment. That thought doesn't even cross your mind, right? So yeah, that's what I would start like exploring, is like, when do I feel like myself? And then how can I add more of those people or that environment or those things or those themes more into my life? Like, what is going to consciously create that?
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think that many of us forget to create those moments of joy because, as you said, we're so busy and many of us are so numb to the stress that we're feeling, or it's just go, go, go. And you're right. I do believe it is the little things. And I love how you kind of brought up the point that, what does worthiness really mean? Being deserving, not deserving. What does that actually mean? And it really is just connecting with moments that we feel that sense of, as you said, freedom or ease or, love, just joy. And that's what, we want to aim to have more of, and to create, the space and the opportunities, as you said, the people to have more of that in our life.
Yeah. When do you feel like that?
For me,
Mm-hmm.
I would say when I'm with my family, the little things, sometimes just even sitting on the couch and watching TV together, or playing Rummikub, or, being on vacation, walking on the beach, really it's the little things.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the, I'm on a stage in front of 3,000 people. No.
No.
I mean, of course, those, that brings a certain amount of satisfaction, but it's really what all of that is about, which is about people. It's about connecting with people. And I know that that's true, because you deeply care about making sure that your work really helps people to love themselves more. And so, what are some of the, I don't know if the right word is kind of practices or habits that you invite people in your community to do to experience even more of that connection to themselves or to others?
Mm. Well, you know this because you helped me prepare for my TED Talk. But I always say that, especially as it relates to body image, I used to be of the thought that for you to love your body, you have to look at yourself more. You have to get dressed up and look in the mirror and take a selfie. And I think that's cool. There's a time and place for that. That's great. But over the years, what I've come to realize is that we live in such an image-driven society already that I feel like that adds fuel to the fire. And what we need more of to reconnect with ourselves and our bodies is to stop treating our bodies like this image, constantly looking at it or feeling like we're looked at. For women especially, this comes in the form of like the male gaze. If you study any kind of sociology, it's all about like, oh, what does that guy think of me? How do I look like to him? And we're always seeing things from like the perspective of a man, even ourselves, which is so sad because it disempowers us and takes away our autonomy. And so to kind of combat that, the saying that I like to share is that our bodies are not an image, they're an experience. And so what can you do to like experience your body more? And that could be, again, it could be little things. It could be just like eating your food slowly and like loving what that tastes like. Or it could be dancing, like such a great way. Or it can be being out in nature, or just anything that gets you really connected and feeling like yourself, like going back to what we talked about earlier, like when do you feel the most like yourself? Usually those things will inevitably connect you to your body as well. So that's a big way that I started healing body image, my personal body image struggles, is by just stop even referring to your body image as a body image. I know it's so contradictory, and I use that term all the time because I mean, it's what people understand, but really we could definitely reevaluate that word and see if there's a word that can better serve us for what we're trying to create, that's more focused on what we're trying to create, which is just a greater sense of peace in ourselves. So even something like body experience, like what's my body experience like right now? And so a lot of people, when they think about body image, they're like, I feel fat. Well, it's like, that's not a feeling. um, Fat is not a feeling. Usually the feeling, the experience that comes with that is I feel unworthy, or I feel tired, or I feel unlovable, or those kinds of things. And so getting more into that experience and feeling through your feelings and starting to be like really conscientious of like word choice and how we describe that body experience is so important.
I appreciate that you shared that. And that is such a paradigm shift, to think of our body as this, as you said, as an image, something that people look at and judge. And then, in turn, we judge ourselves, versus an experience, that we get to really embody, if you will, our physical experience, whether it's through movement or through breath or through, eating mindfully. And so, when you have someone who maybe is struggling with their, let's say, with their weight or with something like that, and they find themselves in a place where they feel some of those things that you mentioned, right? Like the unlovable, or how can they kind of make that jump from that state of mind into the state of mind of, let me do these things, right? Let me connect with what's important to me and do more of that, when they might not even be in that mindset yet. I guess what I'm asking is, if someone is really in a low place, what might help them? What might be a hand, if you will, that we could offer to them now to be willing to love themselves enough even to do the work to experience more of that joy?
Yeah, I've definitely had moments where I'm like, I get it, but I don't feel it. And I'm still gonna wallow in self-pity on the couch with a pint of ice cream because I didn't like myself at all. And it's like, first, there's a lot of like shame that comes with that. So I just want to validate the experience that we've all been there. I think we, like you said, we attribute it to women, like only women are really conscientious of how they look. But I've seen a lot of men in my life have the same experiences, maybe not as intensely, but just depending on the person, I guess, like that is such a normal thing. And again, we have to just remind ourselves that it's not really coming from us. Like it's not, I feel like shit. It's, I was made to feel like shit. Um, and Vered, my background is like in life coaching, and we're not about being victims here, right? We're not going to like shift the blame onto someone else. And so I had a hard time with this because I'm like, well, no, like I control my reality. I control my thoughts. Like this is my fault. I think there has to be a balance, and it's something that I'm really grappling with lately, but there has to be some sort of balance between like what societal forces are contributing to this and who is benefiting from this and who is being oppressed by this, and also what can I do about it. So I think it's like a both situation. So like, okay, this isn't my fault, but it's my responsibility to move forward, because what else are you going to do? So yeah, like kind of shifting that language and just recognizing that you weren't born feeling like this, that this is not a feeling that's coming from your higher self. It's very much a feeling that's coming from societal conditioning. And then like you can let yourself wallow in self-pity. I usually put a time limit on it. I'm like, I'm going to give myself an hour or a week if you really want it, or even a month. Like maybe just give yourself that time, because it's hard. It's really hard. And I'm speaking as like a very privileged person who, even at my highest weight, I'm still in a relatively small body. But for a lot of people, that's not the scenario. So a lot of people come to me and they're like, well, Mary, it's easy for you to say, because like you can walk down the street and be fine. Whereas a lot of people in bigger bodies don't have that same experience. So it actually adds fuel to the fire to hear other people saying the same things that they say to themselves, which is a whole nother very difficult, complicated subject to explore. But I think validating that experience is so necessary for everybody, and just knowing exactly like what, maybe not exactly, but beginning to explore like what's contributing to it and where it's coming from. And then picking yourself up and employing some of the tools and moving forward. The first chapter in my book, I talk about how a lot of people think that when I lose weight, or when I get the house, or when I get the job, like then I'll wear the bikini or have people over or donate money to charity or whatever like your dreams are. And it's not actually, like you said, like we were talking about earlier, it's not actually in the doing so much as it is in the being. So at a certain point, you really do have to like just reframe that story, which is what Vered is an expert on, about like what are you feeling right now, and now what do you want to be? What do you want to embody? And then like the subsequent actions, like if you're like, well, I want to be confident, then you have to start telling yourself, like, I am a confident person that's just struggling with some insecurities right now, as opposed to I'm an insecure person who wants to be confident some arbitrary day in the future. And so once you start telling yourself, I am confident, and then you're like, okay, what does a confident person do? And you start doing those things, and they're so basic. But it always starts with that like first state of being, which is something I learned into my self-love journey that's helped me tremendously. So it's the first exercise in my book is determining like, what do you want to be? And then it's like, okay, what do I need to do to like kind of actualize that? And then, all the halves, like having the things is going to come pretty organically eventually.
Wow. Once again, thank you, because I think that you're, simplifying something in such a beautiful way, because it really doesn't need to be difficult and it doesn't need to take a lot of time. And it just requires some focus and noticing our emotions and noticing our thoughts and speaking a little more kindly to ourselves. And once we do that enough, then, like you said, we can start to ask questions like, what does a confident person do? What does a happy person do, right? And then kind of taking those little steps and setting ourselves up to move into that even more. And it's been quite a journey for you, which is what I really appreciate, because you started from a place that had a lot of self-judgment, and on the outside, people would say, here's this beautiful young woman, she's got it all. Yes. And yet on the inside, it was a completely different experience. And first of all, this is a reminder to all of us, just because somebody looks a certain way physically, or, it seems like they drive the right car, they live in the right house, or they've got the right family, or whatever that is, all that external stuff doesn't mean that they are fulfilled on the inside. We all have our own struggles. That's the human experience. And even when we have it all, maybe the struggle is that we want more. But yet there's always this kind of what is enough. And I think, to your point, how we started today, when we start with just saying, I am enough, and embodying that, living into that, then we start to see evidence of that. But we don't need the evidence before we can believe it. We can just train ourselves to believe it. And I had an experience years ago, Mary, I remember in one of my first coaching clients, when back in the day that I did coaching pro bono, just when I was starting out. And I remember it's this beautiful woman, from South Africa with this awesome accent. And I remember in the first conversation, she said, I hate myself and I've never loved myself. And I remember it was like this moment of like, really? Like, you've got it all. You've got this awesome job, and this beautiful body and the accent and all this stuff. And yet very quickly I realized none of that really matters. It's how we feel that matters. And so I thank you for kind of sharing with us today some simple ways, simple questions we can ask ourselves, simple challenges we can give ourselves to move closer to that. It's something that's an everyday choice. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's so true. It's shocking sometimes. It catches you off guard when somebody like it shows that level of vulnerability, especially somebody that we admire. But yeah, we're all struggling with our own things.
So, in terms of like, other tools or exercises or practices that someone can kind of do to feel even better about themselves, what other little tip, if you will, might you offer that could help somebody?
Hmm. To think about that little
Yeah.
tip. Feels
What
like all
what
my
what advice would you give to your younger self? Maybe is another way to ask that. If you were to kind of imagine this younger version of you that didn't quite love herself as you do now, what would you want her to know?
mm, I think, well, one thing that I shared with my sister when she was struggling with some things, people at school were bullying her for her body and calling her fat. And I think a big thing for my body image journey was to stop using fat as a bad word and rather just as a descriptor. And so I told my sister, I was like, well, fat's not bad. Like, it's not a bad word. And, I would take fat over mean any day. And I said something to her, made her laugh. That was like, well, I would rather enjoy my ice cream or something like that. And I don't remember what I said, but it like totally vibed with her. But yeah, like those things for body image, let's just start unpacking like that word fat and the beliefs that come with it. And doing a lot of research into like the fat acceptance movement and fat phobia and the social justice components that come into that, because it's very, in my opinion, very, like we shouldn't be living in this bubble of like ourselves with our thoughts, and we need to start like exploring other people and their experiences and getting curious and that kind of stuff, which is something I always recommend to my sister, which is one reason why social media is such a good thing, is because we live in a predominantly white neighborhood that's more or less upper middle class. And when she's on the internet, she sees people who live different lifestyles and are still beautiful and express themselves fully and are so many different cool things, and just opens up the possibility, kind of like, how people say like it gets better when you go to college. Well, the reason why it gets better is because there's just more people, more diversity, more things to explore, right? So that's a big component. And yeah, another like tip is work with Vered. Pro tip, life hack.
Well, Mary, I thank you on behalf of all of our listeners, because you've shared once again just real tips, real things that we all can do, and you reminded us that we're all alike. We all have our stuff. I mean, I have a lot of clients that are CEOs and men, women, and we all have our stuff, whether it's body image or other forms of image, perceptions of what people think of us, our employees or other people in our life, and we need to make peace with ourselves on the inside before we can truly experience it on the outside. And I think that everything you articulated today is going to help people to do that.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's my favorite thing to do.
Wow, you are one big source of light and love. And thank you for taking the time. I know you're one busy lady. Thank you for, taking this time out to be with us. And how can people learn more about you, about all the awesome programs that you do, about your book?
Well, I am Mary's Cup of Tea everywhere. On the Googles, the Instagrams, the YouTubes and Facebooks and podcasts is Mary's Cup of Tea. My new book is called The Gift of Self-Love, and it's a workbook for people to start healing body image and building confidence and recognizing their worth. And that is available for pre-order now until March 23rd, which is when it officially releases. And when you pre-order it, you'll get it. From my understanding, you're supposed to get it in the mail on March 23rd. So that's really exciting that my book is out. It's also going to be in like the Walmarts and Targets and stuff. I think I'm a little biased, but I personally think that it makes a great gift. Part of the reason why we called it the gift of self-love, especially if you have a girl or woman in your life, I think she'll relate quite a bit. And it's a cute little coffee table book, and it smells really good, like all books do. So that's called The Gift of Self-Love. That's at maryscupoftea.com/book. And yeah, everything else is on my website too, including retreats and stuff like that.
Well, I love you.
I love you.
Thank you for the gift of love for all of us here today. And I can't wait for, to hear even more things from you, because you have so much to teach. And and you truly listen to people. I know that you deeply care and you truly listen. And that's why you connect with that struggle. And that's why everything you shared with us today is so real, so raw, from your own experience and other people's experience. And that's the beauty of this work. So thank you once again. I
Thank you
loved
so
every
much,
minute.
Vered. This was great. Thank you. Bye, Elle.
Bye.